My name is DeAnkarra Chef, private chef, winner and judge of Zimbabwe's premier cooking show, Better of the Chefs. I've been working in this industry for 11 years, traveled the globe from Italy to Ethiopia to Kenya to Botswana, but I always had a burning question. What is Zimbabwean cuisine? Are we eating the foods we used to eat? Are we cooking them the way we used to cook them? So I've taken it upon myself to travel Zimbabwe and find out just what Zimbabwean food is. First up is Rushinga, the corner of Zimbabwe close to Mozambique. I met up with a couple of locals who are the custodians of these traditions. When we arrived, there was some food that was displayed there, and my first thought was, wow. Some of them were familiar, like baobab and thorned melon, and a few other ingredients like the millet and the sorghum. But then there was the maize with the myriad of colors, and they were so bright, and there were so many stories linked to them, from fertility even. Like they eat them if you're having only one sex. They kind of eat that maize, and then you supposedly can change the sex of the next child. So that was quite interesting. Those aspects are important in creating a story. I'm all about creating an experience in my dining, so having those stories behind the food will actually create an experience whenever I'm then curating an event. That there's this maize that I used to cook this, but also they use it for this, and that is something that can linger on with the dining guest. Having grown up Kumusha, I had kind of an idea, but obviously I hadn't been Kumusha for a while, so it was kind of like going back and experiencing once again how it was. So just, you know, the heat, the smoke, but what really stood out to me was the intentional processes that they used. The roasting, the sieving. One of the dishes was a Mambe, which you had to kind of bind together. So the thought process of binding that milled seeds with tomato, it was an eye-opener that these guys have these processes, but maybe they just don't have them named down like we do when we go to culinary school. It's just things that they've been passed down, so they just know that in order to have this result, I needed to do this. The first dish they made for us was the okra coffee. They obviously dry the okra in the field, then they bring the okra and then they take out the seeds. They roast the seeds, the okra seeds, until they are light golden color. The ladies would touch the seeds and they would know that they are ready by the heat. I just gone out for a minute, heard a popping sound. As I was approaching the door, I could smell coffee. But once again, this is really, really interesting. Something I've never had. People say that our food is boring and bland, but this trip has really showed me that there's so much diversity, and can't wait to try it. They mill the seeds in their mortar, and then they just brew the coffee. And the brewing doesn't take long actually, it's just boiling water, then they added the milled seeds, and that was the coffee. It kind of tasted like green tea actually. I called it green coffee because it really had a green tea flavor to it. There's a really big potential, especially for those who don't take caffeine. It will be a good substitute. And in my case, to have an okra coffee at the end of a dinner would be something that would end the dinner with a wow factor, so to speak, because it's something that I'm sure the guests would not have expected. After we're done with the okra coffee, we then had baobab coffee. It was interesting. It was, I think it was closer to coffee than the okra. And the coffee flavor began to develop the more you had of it. So the initial taste, I didn't quite enjoy. But once I continued to have it, I actually then said, okay, I can taste the coffee notes, and I enjoyed it after that. Baobab is really something that they've taken to the next level creatively. So as a chef, that was quite an eye-opener and dispels the notion that our food actually is not creative. The surprising beverage was the soybean coffee, which I really didn't expect, and actually which the ladies brought out as a surprise, and they told me to guess what it was. It was quite a creamy beverage, and actually one of my favorites from the 3 beverages that we had in Rushinga. One of the highlights of my time in Rushinga was Mambe, which they called the African sausage.
Kugadzira nyama yechinyakare.
Nyama yechinyakare.
Muchirungu wamwe vanoti masausage, but it's African sausage.
African sausage. Haina zita rechinyakare here kana kuti yemurishinga munoiti chii murishinga? Mabumbe. All right. Saka togadzira mabumbe.
Toda kugadzira mabumbe.
All right.
Kuti mabumbe zvinhu zvinenge zvakaita zvibhora bhora.
All right.
Kubumba kwechinhu.
Okay. They used an ingredient that we usually have fresh, which is mapudzi, which is a form of a gourd that is found in the fields during usually the rainy season. So they roasted them, they milled them, they sieved them, and then they used the tomato to bind them. So they milled it with the tomato bound together, and then they formed kind of like cylindrical shapes, and then they boiled them with the nyemba. So nyemba is cowpeas, and they dry the leaves from the cowpeas and then use these as a green vegetable to have with the sadza. And the mabumbe, because they are seeds, they have oils in them, and those oils then flavor the water and the greens, so there is no oil that is used in the making of that dish. So I ate the mabumbe with the finger millet sadza, which was actually hand milled for us in the kitchen. I also had a hand at trying at the hand milling, and it was quite, well, I wouldn't say easy. I'm sure if you're trying to mill like 10 kgs, that would be a lot, but it was quite enjoyable. Well, this is fairly simple. I think I got a job in the village. So we had it with the finger millet sadza, which had a really nice, almost dark purple color. The flavor was really amazing, something that I never had. And the constant issue that people have with our organic, traditional milled sadzas is that they don't like the texture. It's a bit grainy, but I didn't find this grainy. I think the process itself, there's not a lot of sand particles that were detected, so I guess they had really sieved out the millet. So it wasn't grainy at all, and it really complemented the mabumbe. Day 2 of our Food Chronicles in Rushinga. I'm so excited. Didn't expect to have a day 2, but there's so much to learn yesterday. So today we've got the Roadrunner going on the pot, and we've got a few more dishes to be shown. So I'm really excited. Come on, guys. One of the things I was really looking forward to on day 2 was the Roadrunner, which is the organic chicken. Having observed the chickens from day 1, they eat almost anything and everything, from seeds, from the processing, from the millet, from the sorghum. And so I was really looking forward to the flavor, whether it's going to taste any different from the ones we have at our local restaurants in the capital city. Luckily, it had been prepared for us because Roadrunner takes quite a while. You need to really cook it down low and slow to break down all the tissues. In Rushinga, sorghum is really a popular grain that they grow there, and like the baobab, it's really used in a myriad of ways. But one of the things that really stood out to me was during the processing, they mill the sorghum first with a little bit of water so that they get rid of the outer skin, and then they sieve that once or twice. So that final sorghum seed is then roasted, and whilst they're roasting it, literally I could smell basmati rice, or the finest rice you can think of. And the ladies were actually telling me that when you're preparing sorghum, someone can be in the road and be hit by the aromas and know that today we're having sorghum because of that aroma. So it's something that I didn't expect in terms of the senses. So I was looking to see whether that aroma or that kind of like flavor expectation would come through in the final dish. And so we had the milled sadza, and definitely it's subtler obviously than the initial aroma, but you can taste that almost like high-end rice flavor there. So it was quite an eye-opener, and it really went well with the oily Roadrunner. I can say that that's the best tasting chicken I've had this year. This is amazing. Out of that processing of the sorghum, they also create a drink with it, which is actually almost like a protein shake. It's called tsokore. The sorghum, after I've milled and sieved it twice, they just soak it in water just to kind of soften it up. It's softer because I had the taste of the sorghum before we milled it. So it's definitely softer. Still al dente, which means it's got a bit of a bite to it. But I think I would probably soak it in maybe a flavored liquid, maybe a coconut water, maybe even like pineapple juice or something like that, just to give it another flavor. Because right now it's just more like a textural element. So definitely for desserts and other things like maybe starters, I can use it as a textural element. But I guess as a snack, it's kind of like a carb hit, like some carbohydrates to just give you some kind of energy because they eat it as a snack. So definitely something I can work with. But I think it will be an acquired taste for the town folk. Another highlight and another byproduct of the sorghum was the chewinga. This is the organic honey that they take from the forest, bring this to the boil, and then they add the freshly milled sorghum to form kind of like a sorghum honey fudge, so to speak. This obviously gave me a few ideas for desserts or petits, which are things that you have at the end of the meal, so you can have your coffee with little chewinga petits to go with those after a 5-course dinner, so to speak. I can safely say that these have been the best 2 culinary days of my life in Zimbabwe because they really opened up my mind to the possibilities of what our food can be in a modern sense. It also challenged me as a chef that I haven't done enough to find out about my cuisine. We're usually told that Zimbabwean food is bland, it's not creative, but these real folks really showed me that it's just a lack of knowledge and an ignorance on our part that we haven't gone and discovered how things were done back in the day so that we can bring them into a modern setting. All chef schools should send chef students out so that they have a basis of what our cuisine is about, what our processes are about, so that we can then bring them back to town, bring them back to hotels, to fancy restaurants, so that whoever comes to Zimbabwe, we can safely say with confidence, this is what Zimbabwean cuisine is and this is where we are taking it. So next time you see me, I'll have some of these ingredients, played with them a bit to create something new, something different, but quintessentially Zimbabwean.